Hello and welcome everyone. I'm NQ Ripley.
And I'm NQ Neota. Welcome to this special episode of Ask Aphelia, all about PvE.
Thank you to everyone who sent in your questions for this week, and we're joined by NQ Descartes to answer as many of them as we can. Let's get started with, will PvE missions be in PvP space?
Yes and no. Technically they are in PvP space. However, they are not within realistically reachable space. Thus, they are considered safe in terms of PvP involvement.
What happens with our ships that are docked?
So, either the docked ships will be left behind outside the mission, or you won't be able to enter the mission entirely until they are undocked. The missions are really designed to enter with one ship. So you go in with a single ship, but you can bring multiple players.
Can the entry and exit points of PvE missions be camped?
Entry points currently fall inside of safe space, and you're both safe to enter and exit from those points.
Do we get small amounts of plasma for doing missions?
No. Plasma is still a resource which is dedicated to alien cores at this time.
Are missions solo or group content?
Missions can be both. The easiest difficulty ones are really quite doable on your own, and to some extent, if it's not even really beneficial to bring a second person along. However, the higher the difficulty goes, the higher the risk and the higher the danger in the mission, and also the higher the reward. Where, for example, doing hard or very hard on your own is going to be pretty much impossible. I'm looking forward to seeing if someone can actually pull it off, though.
Will enemies leave containers or wrecks?
At present time, there will be no containers to loot and no ships to salvage. The reward is received in quanta after the mission is completed. This is partly due to some technical restraints that we have, and simply as we're still balancing, quanta is a safer value for us to use.
Are missions time-gated, or can we do as many of them as we want without cooldowns between missions?
The PvE missions are currently not time-gated. We also do not have any intention of putting this in place. However, we've also not really seen how the feature will take off yet once it's released. And things could always change in the future, but we will be keeping an eye on that nonetheless.
What do we need to do to prepare for the missions? For example, do we need ships, weapons, quanta, or something else?
So for a mission, you will need a ship that meets the requirements of the mission, which is fitted with weapons. I would highly recommend a shield of a matching size. So if you have if you're entering a medium mission, you can bring up to a medium ship with a medium shield generator and medium weapons. Or smaller if you want, but I would just go with the larger weapon size that's going to help you. You won't need quanta. There is no collateral for the missions anymore. We had those planned in originally, but we took it out. And other than that, I would say you're going to need some space engines and some scrap and determination.
Will enemy types vary as the difficulty goes up?
Yes. So through different difficulties, you will encounter different enemy types. Along with, as you go up in difficulty, you will start to encounter elites, and you can encounter multiple of them, and they will offer an additional challenge to the fight.
What are the minimum and maximum requirements for missions?
Missions do not have minimum requirements, but they do have maximum allowances, meaning you can only bring weapons and shields of certain sizes, or a maximum amount of players. This is just to safeguard the difficulty of each mission and not make it possible to just roll over them with very high amounts of guns or equipment.
How do we get to the PvE entry points? Is there an item or some system?
There is no special item needed to find the entry points. They are just locatable through the UI. You will need to travel to them. However, they're at a planet of your choosing, so you won't need to travel for hours and hours and hours to get to a PvE mission site. However, you will need to do a little bit of traveling into space to get there.
Is there going to be a PTS session for patch 1.4?
Unfortunately, after much deliberation, we've decided to not run a PTS for update 1.4. There are several reasons for this, but rest assured it is going through some rigorous testing as we speak.
How do you keep the missions fresh and avoid repetition?
So the missions are procedurally generated, and the chances of encountering exactly the same mission with exactly the same difficulty twice is unlikely. Encountering the same mission in exactly the same configuration twice is an astronomical odd. That is unlikely to happen.
Is there a time limit on the missions?
Yes, however, not exactly in a similar time frame. Missions are sort of aimed to take between 10 and 30-ish minutes, depending on the difficulty. If you bring more friends with guns, it'll likely go quicker than if you don't. There is, however, a maximum time before your opponents will disengage and you fail the mission if they are not all vanquished.
Can we use our fancy ships for PvE, or do we have to go in cubes and things like that?
This really depends on your own choice of ship more than anything. There are restrictions in terms of mass and equipment that you can bring into a mission. And simply filling a construct with voxels is not likely to really help you in the mission. Having the right shields and the right configurations is more important.
Can PvP players affect PvE players doing missions?
PvE missions are entirely isolated away from uninvited players. Depending on how the initial results of PvE are perceived, we may go down that route further. In reachable space around, for example, asteroids or other events. However, that remains to be seen. We need to first analyze the results of what it'll actually do in the community with the actual feature.
This is one I can actually answer myself. The question is, will NPCs have dialogue and speak to us during the missions? And the answer is no. In the story, we don't have any means of communicating with those attacking us, and we are in the process of trying to figure out who and what they are. And that also brings us to the end of your questions. Thank you again to everyone who submitted them, and if you still have more questions for us, do please share them with us on the forums and the Discord. There will be more communication from us on the PvE feature, and in particular, how to prepare for it. But for now, thank you everyone for listening.
And a huge thank you for being part of our universe. Take care.
Goodbye.